With a pretty much solid opening review. I had two suggestions for openings, basically both out of D4. Someone was, just wanted a D4, D5 overview, and someone wanted a basically a D4, D5, a good positional response for black against 1D4. So I think I'm gonna probably put those two things together, and I think I'm gonna try to have a good amount of time devoted to taking a look at the Semi-Slav. Semi-Slav's an interesting opening, and I wanted to get started on that. And then we have 4 games up for review after that. So I was thinking half hour of Semi-Slav, and then 4 full review games. Hey Aphelion, how's it going? How are you? Nice to see you. Yeah, so I was thinking basically here, there's a few different opportunities. Oh, sorry to hear that, Ophelia. I hope everything's all right. Sorry about that. But yeah, I really appreciate you being here, and hope you're ready to learn some chess. I hope this is a little helpful at least. But yeah, so here, basically, Semi-Slav is characterized by some interesting different. Basically, it's a transpositional opening. Many different ways to get to this, but it's basically characterized by this pawn structure. Yeah, I hate it when that happens, but it does that. But yeah, so this pawn structure BC side. Basically, this is a pawn structure that tends to, basically be very solid for black. On pawn takes d5, e takes d5, and this bishop can advance. Basically, develop comfortably. And here, I think there's not really a whole lot of, play for, for white. It's very open. This is basically, this can be reached either through an early e6 or an early c6. But that triangle structure is what characterizes the Semi-Slav. This overall is very good, and what the white pieces will come. But this is probably, in my mind, this is probably the best, the best position for black, or the best opening logic for black. Here, knight f6, e3, bn d7, queen c2. Bishop d6, and just relatively normal advancing moves. But basically with this, a solid pawn structure for black against d4. I think this is basically what this offers. The bishop's on d6. The pawns, if they get traded off, e takes d5, e takes d5. Everything's pretty much solid, and here, basically. Black has, I guess, some limits on development, primarily related to the development of his light-squared bishop. But here, I guess I would say black is in a solid, good position. Hey, Flavor, welcome very much to the stream. Thank you for being here. But yeah, this pawn structure, I think provides basically a sturdy and somewhat flexible opportunity for black to play against d4. How to develop the black light squared bishop can be tricky. I'm thinking moves along the lines of like bishop to d7, pawn takes c4 can be good, pawn takes c4 followed by b5, b4. Those types of things tend to be fairly good responses for black. But there's a lot of theory here. This provides basically a big divergence point. Here you have b3, bishop to d3. Bishop to e2, and probably the kind of most unlike the others, g4. I want to take a look at this g4 line because that's one that I'm actually not super familiar with. And by the way, I just want to replay and show different ways that this can transpose. E6, knight c3, c6, knight f3, knight f6. Then g3, I guess, is an idea. Main focus. Okay. Basically, I think black's a little bit better after recapping a summary that I read of this. I guess pawn structure if you don't have to. If you can just leave the difficulties with that, You know, I think you probably should. This wouldn't I wouldn't make any changes to it. Just every pawn basically supports every other pawn. If needed, you can play pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5. But here, black is kind of in a stable position. Hey Matt Yop, thank you very much for joining the stream. Yeah, so I would say bn d7, bishop g2. D takes c4 is in theory, but I guess I'm sort of reluctant to play it. With b5. Overall, this leads to a relatively good position for black. 4, b5, and here, everything's looking okay. No, let's go back here. Bn d7, queen c2, bd6, has a good position, and sorry, it looks like I'm having sorry about that. Well, issues we'll go through tonight and take a look. But if sorry for and thank you very much for bearing with me here. If we have much more problems with this, I'll just go to straight Ethernet. That's would be a good solution to this problem. Sorry about the issue though. Anyways, we're looking at the semi-Slav defense, and here things are looking pretty solid. E6, knight f6, pawn takes, and I think basically black. Wow, this is really quite annoying. Sorry about this. Let's see if this is any better. Sorry about that. I'm hoping. No. I think the issue is it's basically I'm gonna try it this way. If not, I'll just go to straight up Ethernet and that'll work. Cool. Yeah, thank you very much, FIFA boy. Really happy to see you back. Cool. So the semi-Slav is characterized by this structure, and with this structure, I think basically black is pretty comfortable. I want to take a look at g4 though, because that's a pretty weird move. This early g4. So here, knight f3, knight to f6, e3, bn d7, queen c2. So I think basically black's in a pretty strong position. This is just to beat. Here I think to kind of advance this. Castles is probably a good idea. Yeah, hey, the FIFA boy is the real original moderator. That's there's been other newer moderators since FIFA boy, but FIFA boy was with us since before the before the lesson days. So credit definitely credit there. Yeah, so castles, rook e8, pawn takes c4 is an interesting idea. I think it's probably not correct there. I get not really how I would play this opening. I would pawn as it and basically keep things solid. It's just quite generated structure. He can try stuff like c5, but at the end of the day, c5 is going to be restrictive, but not really stop black's attack. With moves like h6, g5, I think black will be fine. And here, I think black can basically advance and I don't know. Pawn takes d5 is helpful, followed by e takes d5. Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're doing, Flavory. What would you like to see? We'll add it to the stream for 10 a.m. on May 7th. If you have an opening request, we'll give a slot to it for sure. Thank you very much for asking. So yeah, so here e6, knight f3, pawn takes, and this is also completely fine for black. The main issue with the semi-Slav in general is poor development for this light squared bishop. But if pawn takes d5, the bishop can always develop to f5 and be pretty safe there. Just looking at more things out of this opening, knight f6, white has a few different options. E3, see frequently. Bishop g5 followed by e3 usually. e5 with take e5 and black is fine. Let's take a look at e3 openings. This is kind of interesting. Queen c2 is often played. Kind of bishop to d3, bishop to e2. I guess bishop d3, castles, castles. I think this is pretty much you know, this is gonna basically continue to be favorable to black. It's an easy way to secure equality. It's you know, basically I was specifically asked for this opening structure to first take a look at d4 and d5, and then also take a look at a positional response. This I think is that pawn takes d5, and black is okay. I don't know, e3 maybe. E3, knight f6, bishop to d3. Bishop to d6. Straightforward developing moves I think should provide a pretty good opportunity for black here. c5 is not really a threat because bishop to c7 is a pretty solid response. Bn d7, b6. No issues. No issues for black really here. Cool. Yeah, we can take a look at it. I mean, that's basically an early, it's an early Grand Prix attack. There I would look at something along the lines of like knight c3, or sorry, so e4, c5, f4. I don't know. I mean, I guess the earliest challenge you could do is d5 to that flavory f. You know, basically, you know, black is often trying to establish d5 and basically get the d5 break. You know, whenever I played Jay Bonin, basically he plays. You know, if I play anything that doesn't challenge or that allows the d5 move, I think his strategy is basically just to play the immediate d5. I think that's a good idea, Flavory F. I think that's probably the best idea. But yeah, that would be my approach to that. Okay, e6, knight f6, castles and takes d5. Without that, yeah. I mean, if you'd like to give, we can give a slot to that Flavory F. Let's make that a slot for May 8th. I'll put one in for May 8th for that. E4, C5, F4. I'm gonna guess that it's probably gonna be pretty transpositional to and yeah, and it is the reason why white plays knight c3 before f4 generally. But I'm gonna guess it's gonna have you know, a lot of games where black plays d5. And then a lot of games where black transposes into a Grand Prix attack, or white transposes into a Grand Prix attack after knight c3, I guess. I think a normal response like d6 will generally be followed by knight c3 there. But yeah, it's a playable opening. It should be interesting. But let's keep looking at this one for now. But I'll give that a slot for Saturday. Because I'm curious about that too, Flavory. I actually don't have a top of the head response to that. I would generally play d5, but I don't know any of the theory beyond d5. So, yeah. d4, d5, c4, c6, and this structure is solid. Yeah, totally, Matt Yop. If you post it in the chat right here, I'll put it immediately for. I'll put it in for May 7th at 10 a.m. So. Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. If you give me the link, I'll post it right now. But yeah, totally. And always always ask. You can either send it here on the chat, I'll pick it up, or you can do it on the Discord. I don't know if you have a link to the Discord, Matt Yop, but that also works well. But yeah, please do. Okay, so here, you know, you have knight f3, knight f6, c4. C6, knight c3, and this is sort of a different way that you can transpose into this this semi-Slav position. E3, bishop g5, c takes d5, g3. I'm gonna guess when we look at the analysis that yeah, of course, no, thank you very much, Matt. Yeah, whenever is good. You can just send like a link to it on chess.com or a link to it on Lichess, and I can just pick up the PGN off of there. But yeah, c takes d5, c takes d5, and I think everything's good. G3, I don't like the d takes c4 lines. You know, I'm gonna kind of I guess I'm going to sort of recommend steering out of those. D takes c4 neutralizes black's center too quickly. I know this is fine, and I know that this leads to well-established theory, but it's just not the way that I would play this opening. It's basically an aggressive way to play this opening. I think black can just sort of leave things as is in the center, holding on to this semi-Slav pawn formation, and everything will be good. Yeah. D takes c4, is a move, but it's basically a Queen's Gambit accepted move, and Queen's Gambit accepted moves have specific specific characteristics to their theory that make them difficult to play, at least in my opinion. Semi-Slav structure, knight f6, e takes d5, e takes d5, and black is close to equalizing. Knight f6, I don't know, bishop, say e3, I guess. Bn d7, queen c2, bishop d6, bishop d3, castles. Very smooth, smooth, easy play for black. Again, I would steer away from d takes c4. Here it's the main move, but I don't know. I guess I don't like diminishing this pawn structure. I understand that it gets a bit restrictive, but I would be more tempted to like break it open with something like e5. D takes c4 is, trading your advanced pawn for the c pawn. I know this is slightly better, but it doesn't match intuitively with what I would play. That said, we can look at it. Bishop takes c4, b5, bishop e2, bishop b7, rook d1. This basically, I don't know. It trades off into a relatively even position. This double f pawn is kind of weird that that's in the main line. Sort of surprised that black allows that. But yeah, knight e5 is objectively the best, and the opening book suggests it as well. Here I'd be tempted to play like knight to g4 with knight to e5 in mind. But giving the white these double f pawns directly, that surprises me that that's in mainline theory. Anyways, continuing on this, let's look. Okay. Knight f6, pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, bishop to g5, bishop to e7, queen c2. I think all of these lines are basically fine for black. These allow fixing of this light squared dark bishop. Something like g6, bishop f5, and black is basically straightforward developing. G6, e3, bishop f5, bishop d3. I think black's basically fine here. No real issues. Bn d7, castles, no issues. Pretty much just solid, relatively equalized play for black. Straightforward development, I think straightforward development within this pawn structure. This pawn structure is definitely guaranteed to be somewhat restrictive, but with this restricted pawn structure, I think you can still do a good job developing the knight, the dark squared bishop. You're gonna have to find a long-term solution for the light squared bishop, either bishop f5 or b6, bishop b7. But that's really the only piece that you have much trouble with. I'd castle queen side, or I'd castle king side, and just basically hold on to this semi-Slav pawn structure. It's unlikely to cause any problems. The white squared bishop is black's biggest developmental liability, and you will have to come up with the solution for it. But overall, this is this is solid. C takes d5, e takes d5, is going to lead to something close to equality for black. So yeah, a positional solid response to d4. I'm recommending the semi-Slav. Yeah, let's take a look, Muddy Acre. Totally. It's a good question. Let's look at it in a position where this pawn takes d5 hasn't yet been played. Let's look at like e3. Here, I guess you have to be somewhat careful. It's kind of a tricky maneuvering because you're looking at like something with potentially could allow the knight to be played to b5. So you want to be careful with potential threats like knight to b5 and threats from rook to c1 along the c file. If you neutralize the c file and the rook can take c1, that's not good for you. You can do something like play, I don't know, bn d7, bishop d3, D takes, sure. But yeah, here, you know, I don't know. I think you're basically, you know, you're basically fine. Or sorry, in this line. But let me look at the C5 line because I just spaced out for a second. Queen C2, and I don't know. I mean, maybe if you pair it with A6. I know that White basically has a lot of lines here where he, you know, he has a threat of knight to B5 and threats on C7. I'm wondering if that's really that potent after you castle. So I'm wondering, I think you probably can't do it that early, but I think basically if you do it post-castling, you'll be alright. Pawn takes C4, B5. I think this is all good. I'm surprised that, you know, White allows this doubled F-pawn, but he does. The question was, is there any motivation to play C5? I guess I guess I would say not really. Here, you know, I would just leave this pawn structure as is. I was thinking of your question more in the context of, is C5 playable, versus is there any motivation to play it? I don't really think there's much motivation to play it. I think if you just basically play the pawns out in this structure and hold this structure solid, you know, you're going to encounter very few issues. Breaking this structure will lead to these B5 knight B5 advances, like I was talking about. But here, you know, I think you're pretty much just you know, I think you're pretty much just fine. Hold on to this pawn structure, keep it solid, and you're in a good place. C takes D5, E takes D5 if needed. But yeah, no, I would leave C5 alone. I would not play that as black. You know, threats along you know, this diagonal could potentially be good. But the pawn center I would just leave. Okay, yeah, no problem, Matt. Yep. Please just if it's a PGN file, you can upload the full file to Discord. Maybe that would be a good way to go. But yeah, very much interested in the game, Matt Yop, and please send it either on here or as a file on Discord. That works too. Just a plain PGN file. D takes E takes D5, knight pawn takes, fine. But yeah, I don't think there's much. Muddy Acre, you asked a good question. I would not play C5 here. Leave the pawn structure as is. Leave things solid, and don't sweat it. Black is fine. In terms of more moves for White here, C takes D5 leads to that favorable position we're talking about. I guess let's look at bishop to G5 for a second. H6, bishop takes, queen takes, E3. I mean, I don't know White's theory. I've never played this as White, to be honest. I've played this as Black, but I'm much more familiar at this point with the Grunfeld. Sure, yeah, I can do that, Matt Yop. That works for me. Here, it's just the solidness of this position is just sort of diminished with D5 having taken C4. I know it's recommended, but I would just not do it. I would play like G6, castles, bishop G7, and then E4, I guess, is annoying. But I would leave the pawn on D5 for as long as I can. Here, I think you are forced to play either D takes C4 or D takes E4, because the pawns are going to start taking on D5. So it is actually forced by now, but I don't know. Just this is a solid positional structure. Yeah, I'll take a look at that, Matt Yop. If you can print your name and the opponent's name, just so I can find in case you start playing more games, that would be helpful. D takes C4, bishop takes C4, E5, D5, knight B6, and here basically, you know, Black is fine. This is, you know, good for Black. Bishop G4, rook C1, castles. Okay. Solid. We were looking at very solid. You know, this is going to be close to equality. You know, key plans in this position. You know, messing up white's pawn structure here is probably pretty good. Bishop takes f3, followed by either queen takes f3 on queen takes f3, or just leaving the pawn on pawn takes f3. I think is pretty solid. I would double the I would align the rooks on this open d file, and generally I think black has some good opportunities. Solid position, good stuff. So yeah, castling. All right. D4, D5, other lines in here. I guess there's probably some c takes d5 lines. I'm sure this is something that's been played at various points. But c takes d5 runs into the issue. It doesn't really fix your problem with this bishop super well, and it runs into potential tactics with knight to b5. The bishop can play to d7, but opening up this c file, particularly for this rook on which comes to c1, is not really that great an idea for white. So, anyways, okay, cool. Thanks, Matt. Yep. I will take a look at it, and I will add it for May 7th at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you very much for sending it. Okay, cool. Interesting. Good structure with e5, e6, d5, c6. I think this is your solid solution to this semi-Slav. This basically what is the response to d4 question. G3, d takes c4, bishop g2. There's many different continuations, many of which do involve d takes c4, but I would, intuitively I would steer away from those lines. Just you have very good center control, and d takes c4 weakens your center control in this situation. So yeah, cool. Castles, bishop e7, a4, castles, e4. Black's in pretty good place. Nothing really going on here. I don't know. Maybe c5 could be helpful. E5 could be helpful. This is a situation going with the Muddy Acre with this, with this pawn break. E5 could be good. E5 with followed by knight to g4 could be good. But anyways, I would stick with this, and I think at the end of the day, you're in a pretty good place as black. Cool. Let's look at some more stuff here. Other big lines. So we looked at bishop g5. E3 is the other main line. We looked at this for a minute. With this one, I think you can just develop in a healthy way. Bishop to f5, bishop to g4, knight to d7. But overall, I think black can hold this position pretty easily. So definitely recommend continuing on with that. Bishop to g4 probably is the correct developing space. Yeah, no problem, Matt. Yep. I'm broadcasting at that game at 10 a.m. Eastern time, which is GMT -5. I don't know what the time zone is for the Czech Republic, but I would say here, with the Czech Republic, you can probably, in the Czech Republic, if the schedule doesn't work for you, you can always watch on recording. Recording is, the recording is important. Basically, the recording allows you to watch a game that you otherwise couldn't make it to. So I've got many recordings. They're on Twitch.com up for 14 days, and I also have an automatic transfer system to YouTube now, where those recordings of lessons will be up forever. So I hope that's helpful, Matt Yop. Please, definitely, feel free to watch on the recording if the schedule doesn't work for you. But I'm in broadcasting at 10 a.m. GMT -5. Okay. Let's continue. Awesome. So I think that I think basically this shows some openings, some potential semi-Slav openings. I would recognize this position and recognize that you can transpose into it from many different ways, and it will provide a solid defense for black. With the only problem really being finding a way to develop this light squared bishop. The goal is to come up with an efficient plan there, and you can do it for sure. So definitely go with bishop d7, or basically bishop to d7 if you get an open c file, and if on a retaking of the d5 pawn, take with the e pawn and then develop the bishop to f5. That's my recommendation. Anyways, continuing on, let's keep going here. This next game is from Myriad. Let's look. Here we go. Myriad's playing black here. Let's look at this game. Myriad plays the Scandinavian with an early bishop to g4. We looked at a Scandinavian with an early knight f3 earlier. Basically, this is an unchallenging move for white against black's d5 pawn, or d5 queen. White may be saving this move for later, like knight to c3 potentially, but knight to c3 is the much more challenging response for black. This leaving the queen just sitting on d5 does offer black opportunities. Potentially if knight c3 continues to go unplayed, bishop could take f3 and mangle white's pawn structure for the rest of the game. In that case, black would be equalizing. Hey, yeah, thanks very much, Spared Penguin. No, I'm okay. But we can, if you'd like, we can take a look at a game of yours, or we can look at, basically we're going through some lessons here. So, thank you very much for asking, Spared Penguin. B4, knight takes b4, rook to b1. Yeah, no worries, Ahmet. You're not that late. Hey, if you were that late, I would, if you were that late, we would be done. Yeah, no worries at all. Anyways, we're just gonna keep going, Ahmet, and don't worry about being late. Not a problem. Super helpful for you to be here in any case. Yeah, I mean, we've already sort of looked at. I think we've looked at this game at some length, but I just want to make sure that we give this full analysis here. I think we did this at the end of one of the streams. This queen d5 running into this, basically queen d5 is sort of misplaced here, and bishop to h5, knight to c3 does force the queen somewhere. Queen d7 is an interesting choice, but I think, yeah, we can take a look at this broader Scandinavian. Queen takes d5, knight f6, d4, bishop g4, bishop e2, knight c6. A lot of pressure on d4 here. That pressure on d4 is pretty common in the Scandinavian. We were talking a bit about this earlier. This is a common tactic for black. I think it's particularly strong in lines where the queen stays on the d-file, but even in some of the queen a5 Scandinavian lines, knight to c6 and forcing moves on rook the d4 pawn can be pretty valuable. The rook moves to d8, and I think everything's just generally good. Knight c3, queen a5, castles queenside. Castling queenside in the Scandinavian is a little bit risky, but sometimes it can be a very efficient way to place your rook on the d-file. Bishop e3, e5, d5, knight takes d5, and here basically black is in a good situation. I think, yeah, this is sort of an interesting situation. I think black's equalized here. It's sort of complicated, and it does feel like the king safety is kind of bad here, but there's been a lot of pressure placed on white here. I think knight to d4 might be the best, but I guess I would eval this as reasonably good for black. Yeah, this looks good for black. B4 is probably white's sort of best option to try to exert pressure here, but I don't think there's really anything too great. E takes f3, g takes f3, f4, sure. We just sort of move on this. I'm not familiar with this line where d5 is hanging so much. I don't, basically, I'm surprised that white hasn't opted to play knight to c3, but in this particular position, he hasn't decided to do that. Very unprompted moves. Now this is sort of weird. You know, the queen is actually checking the king on the king file, and white doesn't have a developing move available. This is something that could only really happen with you know, all the development already having been on the king side in the Scandinavian. It's an unusual position. Queen e2, queen takes e2, bishop takes e2, knight d4. And here, you know, I think basically black is looking pretty solid. I'm going to guess that this is, you know, it's about equal. White has poor development. I guess that's the downside, but I would just figure, you know, e5 and black will control the center. All the pieces will develop to their correct squares. Castling queenside will bring the rook to d8, rook to e8. And overall, you know, black's looking fine. Interesting situation. I want to take a little bit more of a look at the Scandinavian here and get a sense of kind of what, you know, basically what happens if white really delays this knight c3. Here, knight f6, d4, pressure on d4. Probably moves like knight c6 are good. I'm wondering about c5. The move that I would play here is c6, expecting knight c3 and then being prepared to play queen to d6. But bishop g4 is the most common. This makes sense too. In terms of plans for black, I think the main plan here is just put pressure on the d4 pawn and be ready to take it. Queen to d6 is good. Queen to d7 is good. Here, you know, basically after the bishop has developed, queen to d7 is fine. Prior to the bishop developing, so say on knight c3, queen to d7 is bad because it stunts the bishop's development. I would not play that there. The correct move is either queen d6 or queen a5. I opt for queen d6 and then c6, but queen a5 is also playable. Queen d6 I think offers better chances for one of the main thematic attacks in the Scandinavian, this pressure on d4. Yeah, I think it's pretty much going to be the scheduled time spared. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to sort of stick with what the schedule says. But thank you very much for asking, Spared Penguin, and thank you very much for sending the game. Do you remember what time I scheduled your game for? I know it's not too long from now, but I just wanted to make sure. I don't want to skip around too much. You know, I've pretty much said when I was going to do everyone's games, so I want to stick to that. What's your screen name, YouTube? Okay, cool. Yeah, I think it's May 7th during the 6:05 p.m. stream. I think that's what I've got here. Cool. Yeah, sure. Yeah, for sure. So if you send it YouTube, I'll take a look. Thank you for asking. Yeah, no, I don't have that in there, YouTube. Thank you very much for asking. But let's... I'll add it. I guess I don't see that in there, but we haven't gone over your game yet. Or sorry, unless it was days ago. Let me just check. I'll check in the past, YouTube, because I want to give you a good answer on that. Do you remember what day I said I was going to go over it? Because sometimes if I've already gone over them, they're not as easy for me to find. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I don't seem to have that one for today at this time, YouTube. I guess we can. If I said it was for today at this time, I'm happy to go over it. But was it sent on Lee Chess? Oh, I said on 5.3. Okay. Yeah. Give me a second. Okay, sure. Okay. Well, you know what? I think I've gone over this one already, so I guess we can go. We can take a look at yours, YouTube. If I said this stream, you know, I don't see it there, but I can go over it. That's fine with me, YouTube. If you're interested in seeing it, I just want to make sure that that's the case. But okay. If I said I was doing it at this stream, then I'm gonna do it at this stream. So okay, cool. So we were just sort of going around the Scandinavian. I hope it's all right if I put it at the end, YouTube. But thank you very much for bringing it up. Cool. Good. Okay, I've got a few more games. Let's take a look at this. So this one was sent through Reddit. This is a basically what Myriad. I think we went over Myriad's game, so I'm okay kind of ending that one a bit early. Knight f6, bishop f4, knight f3, bishop f5, and now you know, white basically adopts that basically the inverse of the semi-Slav pawn structure. Here black's a little bit better. c5, bishop d3, bishop takes, queen takes. Now basically we're in a situation where there's equality. You know, basically a solid pawn structure, a solid yet unchallenging pawn structure for white is generally not, you know, not the way that white should be playing with the initiative. It's better from the black position to play something equalizing. c5 is black's challenge on the center. And overall, I think basically this is, you know, this is an interesting game. I like the way that black is playing this. Black was the one who sent this game, so I'm going to take it from black's perspective. Bishop takes d3, I think, is the best move here. And after bishop to d6, you know, white doesn't want to, you know, I think white basically doesn't want to trade the bishop here. But has no choice. It is black's good squared bishop for white's dark, you know, wrong squared bishop. But overall here, I think black is basically fine. Let's go through this. d4, and then e6. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Amet. Cool. So yeah, so I've added a Mets game. A Mets game is going to be May 8th at 10 a.m. Eastern. That's Saturday morning. Nah, sorry, Amet. We basically have a lot of games tomorrow. Basically, all full for tomorrow. Yeah, Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. So yeah, so c5 puts early pressure on the center. Makes sense to me. You know, I think we're still in opening theory here. So knight c6, healthy development for black. If we're just gonna pause on this for a second. So basically, this is a London system opening. Bishop to f4, knight to f6. White makes this challenge with the c-pawn as opposed to playing it to c6 like the semi-Slav. And basically black is, you know, sees the initiative. You know, this c3 move is a very unchallenging move for white to play. And if white's not going to assert the initiative here, you know, this is good. Yeah, no, I'm very happy to have everyone send games. If everyone can send, if everyone sends in as many games as they can, we can, you know, I can work hard to try to plan ahead and make sure that we get to a good situation. You know, I have more time to prep with more games, and yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Sometimes I can pair the games together based on opening, so yeah, please send as many games as you want. You know, the goal is to provide free lessons and be helpful. So. If you guys have any more games you want to send, always feel free to send them. There's no game that I would hold back on sending. You know, there's something instructive in virtually every game. But yeah, so here, c5 checks the, you know, basically checks the pawn. Yeah, I'm looking forward to your Traxler game, Aphelion. That should be fun. Bishop takes, queen takes, knight c6, and basically black is better. You know, black is better here by about a pawn and a half. Development is healthy. You know, black could potentially trade on g3 if he wants, but this is going to provide this, especially this queenside castling, which I really think is an error for white. allows a really well-made basically pre-established attack on the queen side. A5 and B4, and I think black's really putting a lot of pressure on white. Hanging this exchange was a little silly, not necessary. But here now white's going to get a pretty solid attack and likely some material out of the queen side. So yeah, awesome. One second. Cool. I just want to look at potential improvements for either side here. C5 I think is great choice. Basically early challenge and offsets C3 in a way that gives black the initiative. Bishop D3, bishop takes, knight C6. And now, basically black has equalized. In the situation where white plays C4 and black plays C6, black has the initiative, or white has the initiative. But here, with the inverted pawn structure, black has the initiative. Everything's sort of equal, and then white makes a mistake in terms of allowing, basically castling to the opposite side of the white king and giving black a pre-made attack where he can start advancing his pawns. With moves like rook b8, a5 and b5 can be played pretty soon here. Yeah, totally, Amet. I guess I would say, the best tactics trainers in my mind are chess.com Puzzle Battle, chess.com Puzzle Rush, CT-ART is a standalone program, and Chess Tempo. Those are the things that I've used at various points, and I think they're all helpful. But yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Random, for sure. Exactly that. So C4 is played here, basically starting to constrict on the queen side. A5 and B5 are coming. This is great. Yeah, thank you very much. Aphelion was nice enough to create a chess club, and feel free to join that on chess.com if you'd like to be, you'd like to be on that club. It was very nice of Aphelion to create it, and in addition to the Discord and the, in addition to the Discord, both the Chess Study Group Discord and the TED's Tacticians, and the Chess Study Group Discord and the LM, the main channel Discord. Aphelion also created this club. So anyways, feel free to join it. It was very nice of him to make it. So feel free if that's something that you're interested in. There could be some updates or tournaments on there at some point. But I really appreciate Aphelion making it and helping to contribute effort to the stream. Cool. Yeah, no, totally. I think that's an awesome idea. We could totally do a stream where we looked at games played related to that club or a club tournament. I think that's an awesome idea, Aphelion, and I like it a lot. A2 earns a brilliancy here. That's pretty impressive. So, black is successfully breaking open white's queen side here. I'm going to take this all the way back and sort of show you how this evolved. Basically, as soon as white castled queenside, black could start expanding queenside. C4 is an interesting way to do it. C4 allows b5 to be played. b5 basically can't be played otherwise. It needs a6 to prep it. But c4 actually uses... I think this is the best tempo-related combination, the best way to advance this attack. Here, queen plays to c2, and b5 can be played. And basically, pressure just is going to keep building on this queenside here. The queenside pawns are going to continue expanding, and the pressure on white's queenside is eventually going to cause him some problems. The engine has this calculated all the way through, but this is I think pretty well established. A5 and b4 get played pretty soon. I don't know. Queen takes, I think, is a tactical error, hanging the exchange to knight d7. Pawn takes here isn't fun to play, but basically, much more solid. No problems there. So b4, g4, and pressure getting exerted, on the queen side. I don't think this sacrifice is sound. Black's starting to sacrifice pretty aggressively here. I don't think that's really correct. I think here, probably queen takes f8 is correct, because that maintains this, basically that maintains everything where it is. You know, this queen doesn't really matter whether it's on f8 or e7. King f7 is similar, but I think king takes f8 is similar, but queen takes f8 is better, because you know, on the knight move it doesn't leave the h7 pawn hanging. b4 I think is the move now. g4, pawn takes a3. But I think black is just a little bit too aggressive about you know, hanging his pieces here. This attack is great. I think this attack will provide a you know, first practical compensation, but then the ability to push forward here. Hey, what's up, Leaf? How are you? So yeah, so queen f8 I think is the strategy. Maintain this attack. You know, no need to go do anything crazy here. And then on g4 play probably knight to h4. There's just no reason to start giving away pieces like this. You've lost in exchange for the attack, and you know that turned you from being ahead to being equal. Here, after pawn takes, you're up by 2 pawns. After queen takes, you've given back the exchange and are pretty close to equality. But yeah, generally, I think everything's good. I don't know what that means, Leaf, but in any case, yes, thank you. h5, b4, and then a sacrifice of the piece, and basically black is fine. Black plays the brilliancy a2. Let's just count this out. On a2, this is, I mean, a2 is a tricky tactic. I'll show you in a second, but it's kind of cool. I just don't think this was sound. I think first pawn takes bishop was good. I assume that queen takes bishop just missed d7. So, but pawn takes, you know, if it wasn't a miss, if it was an intentional sacrifice, I don't think it was a worthwhile one. Pawn takes f6 is better. Knight to f8. Yeah, all you, Leaf. Go nuts. Thank you for asking. Yeah, so knight takes f8, queen takes f8, and then everything's good. No one was questioning your right, Leaf. I was just curious if there was something euphemistically that I was missing. But cool. A2 is a great tactical play here, but I think black was overly ambitious. I think first pawn takes f6 doesn't lose any material. So that's an improvement. And then second to that, queen e7, knight takes f8, now down in exchange. If you just sort of straightforwardly take this, you know, basically you can continue to push on the queen side and be fine. G4, you know, this is just too much, I think. You know, you're getting practical compensation, but you're sacking full pieces to do it. I think it's just too much of a thing. Queen takes f8 is better here. I understand g4, you know, after b5, as opposed to retaking the knight, g4 does allow the queen to have this pressure on h7 if the knight moves. But I would steer clear of all of this. You know, equalize materially or as best you can. I mean, you're down in exchange, but you have this good attack offering practical comp, and then basically you know, black is solid. Continue attacking. b4, pawn takes b4, and threats on this a3. You know, there's multiple hooks. They call them hooks, but basically there's multiple entry points for pawns to attack in white's position. And with this here, I think black will basically be in good shape. So yeah, so queen takes f8, and time to start attacking the pawns. Anyways, so this was too much. This was too much material for black to be giving up. He's down many pieces here. It looks like he's down a rook and 2 knights. Then f takes e6, and black basically gets this really awesome brilliancy, right? a2 is a winning move in a position in which you're down many pieces. Queen takes a2 leads to mate in 3. That mate in 3 is here, 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 here. But yeah, great brilliancy, great saving move. It was the only move here that saved you, and basically, you know, it was a great idea. It's a brilliant move because it's something that the engine initially thought was not the best move, and then later thought it was the best move. You know, they give you points for that. They basically say, you know, that you've overwhelmed the engine. There are a few other ways to play this as black, but nothing else can get to this pawn. You know, this queen can't get to this pawn. This king can't get to this pawn. This knight can't get to this pawn. And you know, the pawn is basically you know, the pawn is basically requiring to be taken. Queen takes a2, yeah, and if you don't take it, it queens. So basically, you know, the forced move is queen takes a2, then queen to c3, queen c2, queen a3 leads to the mate. And here, this is yeah, this is good for black. Solid. Yeah, black's you know, black came up with a brilliancy, saved this game. Good work. Awesome. Yeah, so thank you very much, Shreyas, for sending this in. Really appreciate it. This is a game from Reddit. And yeah, thank you very much for participating and for sending the game. Please send more. Thank you very much for you know, joining us, and I hope this is helpful. Great brilliancy. My takeaway here is just basically in this attack, I think you really did a great job, you know, mobilizing this attack after white makes basically the positional error of castling queenside. The only thing is, I think you go a little bit too all out on this. I think you still have a very solid attack after pawn takes f6. Here, you know, the knight may go to g4, the pawn may go to b5, and overall black is fine. But you know, and overall black is fine, so you can continue the attack this way. The white pieces just aren't, with queen takes f6, knight d2, you've sacked the whole exchange. Your attack still is a great attack, but you don't quite have the same, you know, you basically are fighting that attack as from a materially disadvantageous position. Pawn takes f6 and like knight g4 or something. But overall black is better, and you know, if you continue this attack, you're going to get compensation out of it. Great job mobilizing forces on the queen side. I just think you sacked too much material while you're attacking. You don't have to go as all out on this as you did. You can pretty much just play queen takes f8 and still have this really solid attack maintained. I mean, first pawn takes f6. But I assume that queen takes was just sort of, you know, a small. I don't think you intended to play. I don't think you intended to sacrifice here. So here, you know, queen takes f8 is the response. But even here is pawn takes f6 is the response, and you've still got this great attack. Really good exercise of the queenside pawn expansion against the king that's castled queenside, and good work here. Yeah, very interesting game. You got the brilliancy too. Let's show the brilliancy once more. I like the color that it makes. Right here, yeah. A2 is brilliant. Good move. The only saving move, and very cool, creative, tactical idea. Good work. Yeah. So let's go on to the next one. This is from Tarash. So we'll take a look at Tarash's game. Tarash was playing black in this one, and he plays the French defense. Awesome. Thank you very much for sending this, Tarash. Please keep sending them. They're awesome. I know, seriously, like the turquoise is cool, for sure. White doesn't have any. Yeah, no, that's right. We can just go back to that for 1 second. When white takes with the G pawn, yeah, even though white takes with the G pawn. Black takes with the G pawn. White doesn't have any effective counterplay. There's no way for this queen to get in, really. You know, the knight is covering this this pawn on h6, and the queen is covering this pawn on f6. So it looks dangerous. You know, and in big picture it is. But your attack is so far advanced at this point that, you know, assuming you basically don't want to give up material. And you want to be up material after your attack sort of forms and exploits it. Very good stuff. Cool. So on to Tarash's game. But good point, Matt. And yeah, no, you're completely right about that. The pawn takes f6 is actually safe there, as dangerous as it looks. Cool. Awesome. All right, so this is Tarash's game. He's playing black. D5, pawn takes D5, and here, black's basically got a pretty good position. Queen to B4, knight C3 looks like a playable move, but the queen is defending on this bishop, so bishop to D2 is played. Let's slow down on this opening because I'm sort of confused. Knight F3 is an unusual response to the French. It's not unheard of by any means, but it's a distant third option for white. Here, the engine is recommending you transpose with C5. This turns it into the Sicilian. But assuming you don't want to turn it into this, so the engine is pushing for this move, turning it into the Sicilian. Assuming you want to keep it as a French game, you can play D5. Now it's sort of the exchange. It's the exchange French with 3 knight F3. And yeah, so this is basically black's side of the exchange French. Yeah, please send it, Leaf. Definitely do. And if you send a game now, we'll take a look at it on May 8th at 10 a.m. Eastern. Yeah. The background color of the tactics emote. Nah, these things are not as intentional as they look. Jen made that one for me. And it was great artwork and super appreciated. But yeah, I basically yeah, I think it looks cool that way. Green is good. I like it. So anyways, bishop to G4 makes sense. In the French exchange, it's a very drawish opening. Knight playing to F3 is not, white's most aggressive response in the French exchange. Usually the most aggressive response for white in the French exchange is the Monte Carlo variation, C4. Other moves have been tried. There's a Kasparov game where he plays bishop at E3 in the French exchange. But knight F3 is definitely playable. Black is immediately putting pressure on knight G3 with bishop G4. And overall, it's a super drawish position. But overall, it's I don't know. It's basically a very drawish position. But black can still find ways to put pressure on the D4 pawn, and similarly, white can find ways to put pressure on the D5 pawn. Black with the responsive bishop G4 here, can come up with moves like queen F6 and knight C6 that will legitimately threaten this D4 pawn. It usually requires C3 to be played. But yeah, H3, bishop H5, queen E2, queen E7. Trading off the queens in a French exchange is almost a draw offer, to be honest. It's very, very drawish. Let's get back to this game. I was looking at a sideline. Bishop B5. I would probably play C6 here. C6 gain. It's an interesting question because knight D7 does successfully develop the knight, which is good. Certainly knight D7 is better than knight to C6. But I'm tempted to play C6 because definitely after C6 this bishop has to move and then you can develop your knight to D7 immediately. Basically after that. C6 gets this tempo because you're attacking the bishop. So I would be inclined to play that because I think that this pawn structure is good. This C6 move moves you into that pawn structure. Knight D7, and you might end up playing C6 anyways. Or say like a situation, bishop takes, queen takes. C6 would still be an appealing move for black to play. So overall, I think with black playing C6, black is good. Anyways, I would play C6 instead of knight D7, but knight D7 is the immediate development. So how bad could a move that develops your piece in response to a threat? How bad could that possibly be? Queen E2, Queen E7, F6, and then Queen B4 is kind of an interesting play. I guess it wins the B2 pawn, or I guess no, it doesn't. So it threatens to win the B2 pawn, but it forces bishop to D2. I don't know if there's that much value in making the bishop move to D2. I might castle queenside here. Castle queenside and then play queen to B4. If you castle queenside, white will possibly castle kingside, so that's not really going to advance that much. But with queen to B4, bishop to D2, queen E7, I don't really think black's gotten much out of that kind of movement. I would just go with castling queenside, maybe f5, knight f6, something like that. But basically, black is fine. You know, black is fine, but I'm not sure that this immediate queen b4 is super helpful. Maybe c6. Pressure on c6 could be good. I guess, you know, here with bishop to bishop to a4, you can play queen to b4, and then on knight to c3 you can play queen takes b2. Knight c3 is pretty much forced on this hanging bishop. Instead, the bishop can play to d3, and then you can, you know, basically you've worsened the diagonal that the bishop is on. You can now castle queenside and feel like you're not really being attacked too aggressively. So, anyways, all looks good. King takes is an interesting move. I would probably play bishop takes. You know, it is sort of fancy to play king takes and then play like rook e8 immediately. I understand that, but I think I would play bishop takes here. It undevelops your bishop, but you can still save your ability to castle queenside. So I think that's a tactical improvement for black. There are main lines in which black plays moves like king takes d7 or moves that disrupt this castling situation. But I don't think you want to intentionally do one if you don't have to. This all simplifies a lot. And b4. Yeah, this all looks pretty good for black. And now, you know, white's better, I guess. It simplified a lot. I feel like black had some good chances here. In terms of improvement, I would keep the bishop pair on the board. Once you trade off this bishop for this knight, I think your chances of winning go down a lot. I understand that this knight is attacking this bishop, but I think I might play rook takes e1, rook takes e1, bishop to e6 here. I was actually just thinking bishop to e6 originally, but then I saw the engine, so rook takes e1, rook takes e1, rook takes e1, bishop e6 is actually slightly better than bishop to e6. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Leaf. Your game is in for May 8th at 10 a.m. Thank you very much for sending it. Yeah, thank you for sending it, Leaf. Everybody, feel free to send as many games as you want, and don't worry about it. I'll try to, you know, study the most instructive parts of each of them. Feel free to send any game you like. But yeah, more material is always good because I can you know, basically plan ahead with it. Okay. Let's keep going. So it's the exchange French. The exchange French is a really open position. King takes d7, I think, was an idea to get the rook on this open file as quickly as possible. But I think undeveloping the bishop and saving, you know, your ability to improve your king's position with queenside castling was probably better. You know, you're sort of castling by hand. Here, don't trade off your bishop pair. Your bishop pair is one of black's biggest assets in this position. And I think bishop to e6 or rook takes rook and rook trade and then bishop to e6 is black's best response. Yeah, you're good. Now it's an opposite colored bishop endgame. I think black should still be able to draw this, but it got much more drawish after you know, the bishop was traded for the knight and it went into an opposite colored bishop endgame. The saving move was bishop to e6. Here, I think basically black is, you know, black has made a lot of progress. This b3 pawn is weak, and I just want to see kind of where the you know, the turnaround was. Pawn takes c3 is probably not good. You know, it mangles your pawn structure as much as it mangles white's. Cool. Rook to h4, rook takes h5, and basically here I think black is fine. The white is hanging 2 pawns at once, both the pawn on b3 and the pawn on h3. H3 pawn is completely undefendable. The rook will take that next move. Overall, very good. So, interesting. It's still an opposite colored bishop endgame, but with 2 pawns worth of compensation, it should probably be a win. If white can get, or if black can get both of these 2 pawns, it should be a win. Black will need to be careful even in this final position. Things like bishop takes b3, e5 are still dangerous for black. Black will need to be careful. But yeah, I think you're pretty much good as black here. Awesome. Takeaway improvements. White played an unusual French exchange variation. King takes d7 is fancy, but I think it's not objectively as good as playing bishop takes d7 and castling queenside. There's a lot of value in getting your queen off of that, or your king off of that open file, and king takes d7 does this in kind of a a creative but not super strong way. I mean, there's still a lot of checks available for the queen, for example. Like queen could play actually I guess queen can't play b4, but the queen could set up a position in which you could play b4 later. And this king is overly exposed. King safety could be better. Bishop takes d7, castles queenside, and I think black is good. Yeah, black is castling by hand here. That's the goal. Getting the rook to e8 is good. But I think it's like one of those things, like, it's just going to take more moves to do it that way. The bishop's not really doing too much to this knight. This knight can't really go anywhere anyways, so it's not as if it's, a very relevant pin. I think you can give up the pin and just castle queenside and do in basically one move what it would otherwise take 3 moves to do. Like, it's, castling by hand takes 3 full moves to move the king twice and move the rook out. 3 full moves. So bishop takes d7, castling queenside, I think is the way to go. Here, basically, I think you're in pretty solid position as black. Keep the bishops on the board is the most important takeaway. Trade the knights, but keep the bishops. The material is equal, and the pawn structure is symmetrical, although, symmetrical in terms of files. So I would keep the bishops on the board, play bishop e6, and you're in pretty good shape. Yeah, nothing too exciting. Black does a great job winning this game out of an opposite colored bishop endgame. Really great job kind of fracturing the position and getting the rook to be in white's position. Basically, h5 is a great move. It forces open the rook and knight pawns here, letting the rook get in. And yeah, overall, this is going to be a win for black. Black wins on time here, and black will still have to be careful, especially with this discovered threat d5. But overall, black is fine, and at the end of the day, it's a good win, solid. But those are the takeaways. The king takes d7 is probably not necessary. It's a little bit too fancy. The other one is keep the bishop's pair on the board in the endgame, and try not to trade off into opposite colored bishop endgame if you unless you really feel like you have to. Okay, cool. On to the next game. We have 2 more games. The 2 games are the one that was sent earlier this chat, YouTube War, and also we have a game from Myriad 58. We already took a look at Myriad 58's first game. Let's take a look at YouTube Warrior's game, and then we'll do Myriad 58's game at the very end. Cool. Okay, so this is War Black's game. War 6 is playing black here, and let's look at it. Bishop g5 is pretty aggressive. Black is black is being challenged early on this knight on f6. I think probably the engine is suggesting d takes c4. I would probably play e6 here, but again, I'm sort of biased against this this pawn takes c4 structure. Pawn takes c4, knight e4. Here I would be careful. I'd do things. b5 is probably fine. I think this is all book, but bishop e7 is sort of tempting too. b5 maintains the pawns, but this is all theory. I bet this has been played 5,000 times. Let's see where it really diverges. I mean, here g5 is played many times, 2,400 times. So g5 is the mainline move. Here, white has an in-book knight sack. Knight takes, h takes, bishop takes, and white will get back this knight here. This trades off into bn d7, e takes f6, bishop b7, something like this, and basically, white is equal materially. Black has expansion coming on the queen side. And it's a tough position to assess because black's king safety isn't awesome here. He'll never be able to castle queenside. Yeah, sure, Leaf. Just in case you're interested, Leaf, and partially because I want people to take a look at my basically I'm interested in people taking a look at the YouTube. I think I have a good stream. It's May 3rd at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. I have my YouTube stream, which I'm just sort of starting to put together, but I'll share the link here. If you guys go to this I studied Caro-Kann theory, particularly the Tal variation, on May 3rd during the evening, Leaf, if you want to look at it. I'll still put in another Caro-Kann game for May 8th at 6:05 p.m. So yeah, definitely going to cover the Caro-Kann May 8th during the 6:05 p.m. stream. But if you want to look in that YouTube channel, and then if you want to look in that basically at that stream, May 3rd at during the 6:05 p.m. stream, we gave a full slot to the con. Yeah, I just started it today, so I'm just sort of building up, and the main advantage of having the YouTube stream was I just wanted to make sure that 100% of my lectures go on there and are available forever. That's my goal. I want 100% of these lectures to be free, 100% of these lectures to be free forever, and hopefully it's helpful. So that's what I was thinking in terms of that YouTube. But May 3rd, during the evening stream, this is a good Caro-Kann, or hopefully a Caro-Kann analysis. Yeah, no, I'm really hoping for it, Aphelion. I think it's definitely an improvement. And I only have to do the upload like once every few weeks, so it's an improvement. Thank you, Aphelion. Appreciate it. Definitely the goal. Keep it all up there forever. I think it's the most helpful way that we can do this. Yeah. So just taking a look at this, I want to look at Warriors game. Yeah. So Caro-Kann was on. No, thank you, Aphelion. G3, C5, D5, Queen B6. And here, basically Black's got a pretty good, Black's got a pretty good queenside attack going, but his king safety is sort of lacking. I don't really know the plan forward here for Black. It's going to be very tactically oriented, and it's going to be tricky. B4 requires the knight to move basically, right? Pawn takes e6 is kind of interesting, but I have to assume that this plays out good for Black after bishop takes, e takes d7, rook takes d7. The king is super exposed, terrible king safety, but Black has a double threat here, and he's going to be able to take the rook on the next move. King safety here is so bad that, basically, even with Black winning the queen here, the eval is still only -1. That's how much positional pressure White is exerting here. Sorry, I guess it's the other one is better. Knight takes d1, but it's still only -1.6 here, and with a with a full attack. D4, D5, C4, C6, and this is an evolution out of the Caro-Kann structure. white deviates with bishop to g3 as opposed to this knight takes g5 sacrifice. This is actually the main line, but fine. b4, bishop takes g2, rook takes, king g2, and basically black is good. You know, in this sideline. Let's go back a lot. There's you know, this is you know, that was a deviation from the sideline. Knight d5, fine. I think this is still sort of in main line for this unusual bishop to g3 move. Bishop to e2. White's going to develop in as straightforward a way as possible. Black has a huge space advantage on the queen side. He's going to do something like play a5, play b4, play bishop to a6, and overall black's going to be in a good place. You know, it's a better position for black. You know, or at least an equal position for black. Better, fully better. So yeah, this queenside expansion, these big pawns on the queenside, this is worth a lot. Bishop to b4, queen c2, queen a5, and then yeah, I mean bishop takes c2. It basically white hangs a pawn here, which is great. I mean, you know, black's used this this huge space advantage on the queen side to develop to aggressive squares, and then white, you know, basically hangs a pawn, so black can seize the opportunity. Knight takes c3, bishop takes c3, bishop to b4, and here, you know, black's up by 3 pawns. This is great. This is a connected passed pawn. This you know, this c6 is almost impossible for white to access, so it's very safe. Maybe bishop to b7, knight d7, knight b6, and castles queenside here, but overall black's in great shape. So yeah, solid game for war here. And rook c8 pins the bishop, and it overall ends up in a mate for war. But yeah, let's look at this. The theory improvement here is knight takes g5. If you look at the eval, it's about half a point off. Yeah, thank you very much, Leaf. Thank you for sending the games and the suggestions, and they're both in. I think they might both be for the May 8th at or no, sorry, the Carocon is in for May 8th at 6:05 p.m. and the game is in the day for the 10 a.m. Eastern stream. But thank you very much for sending those Leaf, and yeah, really appreciate it. So g5, bishop g3. There's about a half a point of improvement, half a point differentiation between these two. G5. Knight takes g5 and white's showing a plus 0.5. Bishop g3 and black showing a minus 0.5. Knight takes g5 is better. Yeah. So bishop to g3 is played, which is fine. Knight to d5 is the best move. A great outpost for the knight. If the knight takes it, you get basically a you know, a solid center. Pawn can play, or c pawn can take d5 and stop being backward. Here, queen a5, knight takes c3. Pawn got hung, so great opportunity for black, basically winning material. And here I think there was a misstep. So let's calculate this out. Queen e7 is the suggested move here. A5 is also fine. But basically with bishop to e7, you're allowing bishop takes c4. So there's a missed tactic here. If you play a5, you're completely fine. If you play queen e7, you're completely fine. But if you play bishop off of this file, the bishop's actually serving as sort of a defensive piece here. Bishop takes c4 and rook takes b7 is really a problem for, you know, rook takes b7 on the recapturing of the bishop. So this basically loses a pawn. Moving the bishop off of the b file loses the pawn because this bishop is sort of awkward and undefended. Pawn takes, bishop there. Rook c8 I think is probably I think rook c8 is the right tactical way to play it. It keeps these pawns together. Rook takes, and overall, yeah, good stuff. Rook takes e1, solid and good. No issues there. I think just good play. What are some other ideas? I think, yeah. So in terms of Black's play, I think Black's play was generally great. White made some missteps and hung this pawn. The engine is saying you can cash this out for more with bishop takes, b takes, queen takes c3, and this pawn is passed immediately, and basically you're making a threat with the recapture on c3. Yeah, Black's better. Black's up by 3 pawns. And really, the worst misstep of this game for Black, I think, is allowing this tactic, bishop takes c4. Threatening to trade bishops. If Black plays a5 or Black plays queen e7, he's fine. No issues. I think this passed connected c pawn is solid. Generally, good stuff for Black. Good position. After bishop e7, this is the closest that gets. Was queen d8 bad? Good question. The engine says so. It doesn't immediately look like a problem to me. I don't know. Maybe knight to b6 would be better. I definitely understand queen to d8. I guess the argument is that it could, you could say that it's a little bit early here. If you play knight to b6, you're going to have a threat on this a4 pawn that white is probably not going to be able to deal with. This pawn is pinned. So, like, the idea of, like, pawn takes b5 isn't on the table because the queen can take a1. Knight b6 kind of exercises this pin. The pawn still can't take b5, and now, potentially Black could be taking this a4 pawn. Maybe pawn takes a4. The queen's probably going to move off this file. But say, let's just take some random response by Black. Bishop e2 is probably a good idea because then after pawn takes, bishop takes c4. Other moves for white here, I guess like queen c1. That defends the rook. In which case, I think you can play pawn takes. But I don't know. This is sort of tricky. Anyways, I think the reason why it has a problem is because this rook on a1 was not actually threatening a discovery on the queen. If pawn takes b5 is played, then queen takes a1, and everything's fine for Black. So yeah, pawn takes, bishop takes, everything's everything's good. It was so that pin was important. So yeah, I think that's the main reason why the engine disputes it. I think basically I would just open with that makes sense to me. Definitely I mean this definitely plays off great for Black this here. So no complaints there. But from this position, I think Black's in a very good place. So yeah, generally a really solidly played game, Warrior 6. Thank you very much for that. The issue with queen d8 is that it was not forced. It could have been played on a later move. Knight b6 was better and threatened the a4 pawn. But the more serious error here, I think, was missing this discovered tactic. Bishop to e7, bishop takes c4. After this, it gets a lot closer than it should be. Black is really winning by a lot, but this just straight up hangs a pawn. Overall, really solid, well played, and I think I think you're in a good place. You're in a good place with this, Black. Black is in a good place with this. Thank you very much for sending it, War. Really pretty accurate win. Pawn takes c4 is something that I'd revisit. In terms of I have one more. Basically I was going to do one more game. Sorry for, I think I must have misplaced this one. Definitely more in the schedule. If you want to send more games, we'll take a look 100%. May 8th at 6:05 p.m. Eastern is the next open slot. but I'm happy to put in as many games as you want there. If you just send me the game on LeChess or chess.com, I'll post it in my spreadsheet right now. Yeah, and then I wanted to cover Myriad 58's game. Myriad 58 sent this game, and it's pretty interesting. We already looked at one from Myriad 58 that I think we'd already half looked at another stream. I want to make sure that we get to his games. So here we've got Myriad is playing black. D4, F5, Bishop F4, and overall, you know, this is going to play off pretty solidly for black. This is a modern, and you know, black's playing solidly. D6 with E5 potentially coming, and overall, I think pretty good. Let's see where we diverge from theory here, because this looks reasonably good. Like you know, this looks like a reasonably good Dutch kind of Dutch modern hybrid, or Dutch with D6. I guess it's still the Dutch after D6. Bishop F4 is not the most common move against the Dutch. F5 and Bishop F4 is way down the list. The most common move for white against the Dutch is G3. Knight F3 is also playable, but basically Bishop F4, you know, is kind of an interesting move. Puts pressure on C7, but overall not. You know, it's not one of the preferred moves. You know, one of the main reasons why Bishop F4 isn't played much in the Dutch is because G3 gets played in the Dutch. And then with G3, the bishop doesn't have an escape square if the knight threatens it. So, like, you know, say here, knight F6, and then one of the main moves, you know, one of the main moves in the Dutch, not in this situation, but in the Dutch, is G3. And that's particularly bad. I mean, this basically, knight H5 knocks it off of this diagonal, so it sort of makes moving to this diagonal pointless. Here, E6, knight F3, bishop E7, bishop G2, D5, castles. Black's in a good place. You know, this I think this eval is about as good as it gets for black in the Dutch. It's usually fairly late in the middle game that position starts showing equality. Okay, H3, G6, and basically here, you know, black has seized the initiative. E3 is kind of restricting to black, with kingside castling, H6, bishop H4, bm D7. Okay, G5 probably, but black is good. Pawn takes. White basically sets up a big lead here. I'm sort of wondering where this really diverged into a white lead. Like, what was the mistake that black made? E6 does not appear to be a very obvious mistake to me, but I guess with E6, this pressure on D8 becomes a problem. E6, A5, and basically black is good. Or sorry, white is good. Yeah, this position slides very quickly towards white. You know, black was getting close to equalizing, but his king safety was always kind of poor. So moves like G4 could really cause some problems. Yeah, good mate for black. Let's look at white's most favorable positions here. You know, white sort of let black cut through his queenside fairly easily, and I think that was probably unwise. I think basically good ideas for black here are like, so H6, bishop H4, bm D7. Well, this all looks straightforward. King H7 is probably inaccurate. I don't really think it's necessary. I mean, you know, why is the king defending G6 right now? This whole kingside configuration is loose, but that does happen sometimes in the Dutch. I guess I wouldn't play king H7. I would try to make, you know, forward-looking moves, like developing moves. E5 I like. E5, pawn takes E5, knight takes E5, knight takes, pawn takes, and basically black is good. This is you know, this is solid for black. On bishop C4, king H7, sure. But this opening of the position here, I think, gives black pretty good chances. E5 looks like a good push. I like it. Maybe E5, E4. Black is solid. Anyways, King H7 is played, defending G6 against threats, in the future. Bishop to D3, basically exerts pressure on that. You still have this D5 push. D5 is, E5 push. E5 is valuable. If you can get this pawns to trade off and you can get this knight to take E5, you're going to have an extra resource, this bishop on attacking F5. That's going to be valuable. Here, I think white's just better. It's once this king side starts getting broken open, black's got some serious issues. Yeah, I would leave this alone, and black is basically pretty strong. White is, King H7 I think just isn't a productive enough move. E5 with the idea of opening up this file and opening up the bishop's defense on G4 I think is a better plan. This plays out well for black. In terms of other improvements, this basically all looks like kind of mainline Dutch. Very loose kingside pawns, but still the Dutch, and it's probably fine. E5 I think is better than I think basically getting this file open and getting all these attacks, basically everything to open up here. That's very solid for black. Pawn takes, knight D4, and generally, yeah, I think black's basically just losing. It slides against black with King H7 at first, followed by C5, which allows white to continue to develop on the king side. It's just basically white got overwhelmed by all the threats that black was making on the king side. Loose pawn structure, dangerous stuff, and eventually white just comes under too much pressure. But the real problem I think is earlier here. I think here black is fine. But King H7 was inefficient, and the E5, the E5 break really needs to get played. E5 puts white in a difficult position because E5, E4 is very solid for black. E5, E4 with D5 is solid for black, and overall this should basically play out pretty well. Yeah, good stuff. G5, yeah, it was basically just this error. Smooth sailing for black, but white got mobilized quickly, and against quickly mobilized forces, the Dutch can sometimes encounter some issues. E5 break was better at multiple places here. Basically, once the knight gets to D7, start playing E5. Even here, E5 is the best. So yeah, cool. Yeah, your margin for error in defending in the Dutch is low. It's not like the it's not like semi-Slav. You really have to pay a lot of attention to attacks from white against the Dutch, because there's issues with threats on G6, H6, and just general pressure. Yeah, this looks good for white. Your margin was just too limited to play inefficient moves. This whole pawn structure was loose for black, and white was able to exploit it pretty effectively with G4. The E5 push was needed, and King H7 didn't really help your position at all. And then just generally, defensively, little less margin for error than you generally have. But overall, very interesting game. Thank you very much for sending it, and yeah, I really appreciate you all from joining the stream. Yeah, this this was a good recovery too by black. I think white's defense on the queen side was probably a little inaccurate. But the main takeaway here, you got some great positions, great tactics in after the position was getting rough for you on the king side. You made it out of it all right. and basically, yeah, nothing. I don't think much. Pawn takes f3, and yeah, white's just better. F5 opens, f5 and g6 just open the king side for black. Your defensive, your defensive margin for error is less than in other d4, d5, other d4 queen's pawn games. Anyways, excellent game. Thank you very much for sending it, Myriad, and thank you all very much for staying till the end of the stream. Thanks for joining us, and yeah, I hope that was helpful. Have a good night, and I really appreciate all of you being here and sending games that contribute to the stream. Have a good one, guys. Have a good night. Next stream is 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, and I really appreciate you guys being here. Have a good one. Have a good night. See you later. Bye.